The Great Depression was the longest-lasting economic downturn in the history of the nation. In the United States, the Great Depression began soon after the stock market crash of October 1929, which sent Wall Street into a downward spiral and wiped out millions of investors. The stock market had been moving upward during the previous decade, but then took a sudden plunge and crashed. Banks closed, companies went bankrupt, and were forced to close, which sent the unemployment rate up dramatically. President Herbert Hoover was in office at the beginning of the Depression. He was looked upon for answers and any sort of relief from company owners, banks, and the people of the country. Herbert Hoover spoke an optimistic message to the people, but was ultimately blamed for the Depression after showing no solution and having no answers. Over the next couple of years, the nation experienced continued prohibition, steady unemployment, foreclosures on homes, forced migration, and complete loss of pride and dignity. In 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt took office and immediately tried to stabilize the economy. He introduced the New Deal to the people, which would consist of programs that were designed to lift Americans back on their feet and restore the workforce. This was the introduction of government involvement in the economy. Immediately after Roosevelt was elected into office, his first step was to relieve banks and close many more until they found stability. This was declared as the 4-day bank holiday called Roosevelt's Emergency Banking Act. Roosevelt's attempt to better the economy was an enormous undertaking and proved to be ineffective. Therefore, workers joined unions and began to strike for better wage and treatment. There was just simply not enough work for the masses of unemployed people. Food supply was short, work space and availability was limited, which sent workers on strike for a change. Roosevelt introduced government jobs that would provide relief for unemployed men and the nation's infrastructure and agriculture. In 1933, the Federal Emergency Relief Administration was created to assist those impoverished by the Depression. Some programs were formed were the AAA, the Agriculture Adjustment Administration, the CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, and the WPA, Work Progress Administration. President Roosevelt's programs and policies had such a positive effect on the nation's suffering and hardships, the country viewed Roosevelt as a hero. From 1935 to 1940, the Midwest region of the nation experienced the most severe drought of the century, known as the Dust Bowl. Wind-created sandstorms and drought brought on substantial damage and a dire situation for farmers and their families. Livestock died out quickly, which left farmers with nothing to survive on or profit on. People were now demanding more help for more than unemployment. They needed help rebuilding their lives, which they started with their newfound voices of freedom and liberation. The federal government was now recognizing immigrants and Native Americans that suffered discrimination and inequality of rights. Programs and groups were in place to assist people of the United States in desperate times. The struggle to survive was lessened, and the future seemed brighter. By 1940, a large percent of workforce remained unemployed, and the New Deal failed to deliver what was expected for the economy. Although the people were experiencing better days and had an easier time providing for themselves and their families, the country's economic position was bad. The nation would have to utilize new resources during World War II to rebuild and find independence without the federal government's help to end the Great Depression.